We welcome you back to CBS Mornings as Americans cast their votes on this election day. We're looking at two big issues, the state of our democracy and election security. Now, the White House said yesterday there were no credible threats to security, but U.S. law enforcement has warned about domestic violent extremists. There's also some concern about candidates refusing to accept the results. We're joined now by CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent, that's Robert Costa, Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan, and our chief national affairs and justice correspondent, that is the great Jeff Pegues. We welcome you all to the table. Listen, earlier in the show, we have the CBS News Battleground Tracker. Bob, I'm going to start with you. Top of the list, economy, inflation, crime, followed by election issues, guns, and immigration. The point is, the state of the democracy is not in that list, not even in the top 10. What does this say to you about what voters are thinking or feeling about that issue? Because Democrats have hit it very hard.
While polls show the economy and other issues are certainly at the top of mind for many voters, Gayle, I really believe, based on my travels and reporting in recent months, that voters do care about democracy, but not in the way Washington understands it. When I'm on Capitol Hill and people talk about democracy, that word usually is a shorthand reference to the Capitol attack on January 6th. But when I've been out in the South, in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in the Southwest, when I talk about democracy, it doesn't just mean talking about January 6th. It means talking about redistricting, voting rights, the integrity of the broader American system. That's what people are concerned about this year.
And can't you care about both?
Right.
You know, that's
right.
the thing. You can. It
doesn't have to be one or the other.
That's what I'm thinking, Nate. It doesn't have to be either or. Margaret, what about the effect of this? What will the impact have on this election if people don't accept the results? That is a big concern.
It's hugely corrosive. I mean, this system only works if we continue to have faith in our institutions. And the basic premise is that we settle our differences at the ballot box and not at the barrel of a gun.
But some are already laying the groundwork, though, Margaret, if it doesn't go their way.
We are. And that's why I think we, in our jobs, too, need to be so clear that it is not a flaw. It is design of the system. This is going to take time.
Yeah.
We're not going to have absolutely clear views on some of these very closely fought states. And in some places, we might have run-of-the-mill stuff like recounts and re-examination of ballots. That is entirely different than completely sowing doubt in a way that makes people say, you know, it's not even worth me voting.
Yeah,
because if you say I'm staying home, you leave that space to be filled by the loudest, most extreme voices, and we have seen that highlighted, that direct line, and I know Jeff knows this, between domestic violent extremists and those who are denying the results of the last election.
Yeah, that's spot on.
Intelligence is linking that.
Well said. And speaking of that system, Jeff, when it comes to officials, what are they most worried about when it comes to election security?
Violence. You know, and it's so odd to be saying that. In this democracy, we've all covered enough elections, but this one is different.
Yeah.
And it's not a presidential election, but it's a midterm election with the prospect of potential violence hanging out there. And so you have law enforcement, they're on pins and needles. They say they're ready. They're monitoring social media. They're looking out for potential domestic violent extremists, the kind of people who sort of look for an excuse to lash out, to cause problems. And so they're paying attention to that. But just the fact that we're talking about this on an election day in this democracy, post-January 6th, you have to because of what happened that day. And law enforcement does not want to be caught flat-footed this time around.
Yeah, and what do you say to voters that are nervous about going to the polls? We've seen pictures of people at polling places looking very menacing, some of them armed, and you can see the arm. You can see the weaponry.
And they've been told to stay away.
Yeah,
and law enforcement, sometimes in plain clothes, they're watching out for that. You have DOJ monitors being dispatched to election districts across the country. So as I said, they're preparing for this because no one wants any type of violence, which could happen because of some of these operations, these influence operations coming from China. We've seen them active in this space over the last couple of days. You have Russia, Evgeny, this Putin's chef. Okay, that's what we call him because he has catering contracts with the Kremlin. That's his day job. But in his spare time, he runs this internet research agency that tries to stir up trouble online here in this country, sowing divisions around issues like abortion. So they're watching out for that as well.
And Bob, you know, President Trump has been teasing us. He's got a big announcement next week. Do you think that the outcome of this election, these midterm elections, will affect his decision one way or the other? Or Or do you think he's already decided, I'm running?
His allies say he's moving towards running, and that's likely what's going to happen next week. He's going to be watching tonight at Mar-a-Lago, I'm told by his friends and supporters, how his candidates do. He endorsed a lot of candidates this year. He wants to claim at least partial credit should Republicans make major gains tonight. At the same time, his talk of an early announcement this far ahead of 2024, some Republicans tell me privately it's not a sign of strength for Trump to try and be jumping in this early, that if he really had command of the party, he could take his time and wait. But he knows there are so many other ambitious Republicans who are hovering over his own shoulder. Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, as Tony has just been reporting on. All of these names are really become a galaxy of rising stars in the GOP. Yeah. Trump knows that, and that's why he's talking about getting in and potentially trying to freeze the field.
The world is watching, Margaret. How are we being perceived by our allies?
Well, this will also impact whether President Biden runs again in 2024.
Right.
Our allies are watching that. They're watching what's happening right now. And I was speaking to a Western European diplomat who said to me she grew up looking at the United States as a bastion of democracy. And she was sad that she doesn't feel she can, because these divisions are exploited by our adversaries, and really it hurts America's ability to project power. But I just want to underscore that Homeland Security officials, Jen Easterly was on Face the Nation recently, underscoring election infrastructure. They have confidence in the integrity of it. So I don't want our conversation here to turn people away from going and exercising their vote today.
No doubt about it. Margaret, Bob, Jeff, thank you. Appreciate you.